Hey everybody, time to start another build. Fresh off of 2 fails, let's see if we can make it 3. No, I'm just kidding. I certainly hope this won't be a fail, but once again, this is going to be an experiment, so there's one thing that could go wrong. The idea of this build, there are 2 basic challenges. The experimental part is that it's basically going to be an X6 type build or style of build, except it's going to have a 4x2 tail tuner in order to make the overall guitar a little shorter. And that's the experimental part. And really what's experimental about it is the break angle behind the bridge. It can't be too severe or the saddles will have a tendency to slide off of the bridge block. And that's the reason why I have these guitars out. I was measuring the saddle heights and the distance to the tuning peg or the hold down or whatever in order to run it through rise over run equals arctan in order to find out what the angles were actually. And they're all like, oh, what are they? Yeah, they're between, well, this guy here is about 9 degrees, and the rest of them are all like about 25 to 37, 27. But in general, it's looking like if you go for a 2-to-1 ratio of the distance back to your hold down or tuning peg versus the height of the bridge. If this is twice as long as that is high, then you should be safe because that'll keep you around 26.5 degrees break angle, which is not too steep. And you shouldn't have issues with the saddle sliding or the entire block sliding when it's under tuning tension. So, that's like the only real question mark is how far back you got to make this distance. Like on this one, for example, it used to have hold downs up here, and I actually had to remove them all in order to reduce the break angle on this thing because it was having issues with these saddles sliding forward. I also had to notch a groove into the bridge block, and I had to move the screws down a little bit, even for the saddles that are fully seated or all the way down, so that the screws would engage in the notch and help keep things from sliding forward. So that's actually, first I did the notch, and then I had to remove the hold downs as well to reduce the break angle. And that one there is that's about 30 degrees. That might actually be a little bit more. I don't know. I didn't label which one was which one, so. But anyway, yeah, so that's the only real question mark is how far this distance has to be, which is going to depend on, you want it to be at least twice what this height is. And this height really depends on what pickup you use. And so at that point I was like, well, it looks like it's time to start the build, because that little experimental question of how far, what the break angle behind the bridge should be, that's the one little challenge in this build. And then the other challenge in this build is it's going to be a low budget build, which means I'm going to jump on like eBay and find like the cheapest set of tuners possible and the cheapest everything possible, least expensive everything possible, and see how little I can pull this build off for. Now what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go on eBay and find the cheapest part, and then I'm going to go into my parts box and dig up a more or less identical thing, because I've got a lot of cheap stuff around. All the cheap stuff that I took off all the other mods and stuff that I put, nicer hardware on. So, so the very first step is going to be to find out what the cheapest eBay pickup is, and then go fishing through my bag full of pickups and find something more or less the same as that. And then from that I can get my height here, which gives me an idea of what my height is going to be here. And then from that I can get this distance here. And then from that I can go ahead and lay out all the guitar. The only thing I would need to know, I can lay it out to the point where I know the dimensions for everything, and all I have to do is just plug in like exactly how long the neck is, and then I've got it all. And then I just pick a neck and measure it, and I'm done. So, time to go look on eBay and see what's up. These sketches here show you the basic idea. It's more or less the same as one of these other guitars that's under here, like this thing. Where are my fingers? There we go. Yeah, something like that, but it's got a 4x2 tailstock on it. And that's like a sketch of what the body itself would look like. So, like that. Like, where's the bridge? There's a bridge. Yeah, so like that instead of like that. And that's the basic idea. And I've actually drawn up a basic parts list already. You'll need a set of tuners, a neck, obviously, a pickup, and a jack. If you can see a jack, where's a jack? There's a jack. And for the bridge, I'm thinking this thing, because it's going to be the least expensive, just getting a set of 6 saddles. And that way you also get individual saddle height adjustment, which you don't get with this kind of thing. All you can do is shim either end and, set the number 1 or number 6. Set the 1 and 6, and the rest of them are wherever the radius on this particular bridge falls. So, and then of course strap buttons. Not locks, just buttons. Because everything's going to be low dollar. So, yeah, like I said, in order to figure out the final dimensions of the thing, I'm going to need to find out how tall the pickup is, because that'll tell me how tall the bridge needs to be, approximately. So, time to jump on eBay. Okay, went and did some shopping on eBay, and it looks like the least expensive pickup at the moment is a single coil Strat type. I don't know if it was a neck or a bridge or a middle. Probably a neck, because that's going to be the lowest output. It's rated at 5.6K, and I believe it says it has 6,500 windings on it. And it's going for $4.06. Then let's see, the rest of the parts, you can get a set of 3x3 black tuners for $8.45, or if you step up to like $9.38, you can get any type, 3x3, 6Rs, 6Ls in silver. The neck, and this is great news, rush out right now and buy one if you are into buying pre-built necks, because, hold on, let me grab some, I've got some. Okay, these are the infamous copper dot necks, as I like to call them. When I first found these things on eBay about 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago now, they were going for about $35 to $40, and they were described as orange dots, and they're actually copper dots more than orange color. But yeah, this is the infamous orange dot neck. It's a replacement for an Ibanez, and it's 24 fret, and it's about a 15-inch radius on this fretboard, so it's a real shredder kind of a neck. It's got a pretty thin profile and a nice D on it, nice modern D kind of carve straight out of the box. So if you're using it for a traditional build, like a shredder or anything that you want a modern feeling neck on, they're really great. And they're 24 fret too. So this is actually the neck that I like the best to work with, because I prefer 24 frets to like a Fender type neck. So yeah, right now, you can get copper dots on eBay. Time was, 6 months, a year ago, you were having to pay $45, $55 for one of these things. And I was getting them 2-3 years ago for $35 to $40. But now they're back down to $37.46 for copper dots. I believe they are pre-finished in a black like this one is. So yeah, if you're in the market for a neck right now, probably because the dollar is strong is the reason why the price is low on these guys, because I haven't seen them this cheap in a while. Under 40 for one of these necks is a real steal. So that's the neck, and like I said, I got a couple in stock already. And I also had a couple Fenders up there too, just in case a Fender neck turned out to be cheaper. And I'm going to turn off the heater. It's starting to get warm in here. I'll be right back. So yeah, that's actually the most expensive part of the whole build. For an output jack, you're looking at anywhere from $1.56 to $1.72, depending on the color, and that would be for square styles, square type plates. For the saddles, you can get a set of solid Fender non-rollers in silver for $6.69. And for the strap buttons, you're looking at only $1.08 for your choice of black, gold, or silver. And so you add all that up, and it comes out to $59.30, including shipping from wherever to Washington, D.C. in the United States. And then to that, all you have to add is the price of whatever wood you choose to use: plywood, red oak, pine, another plywood. And then the cost of 4 screws, 2 for the swing bar and 2 for the neck, and supplies. So you're going to be using a little bit of dye or paint and some clear coat and a little bit of sandpaper and some wax and some polishing compound, and I think that's about it. Oh, fretboard oil and a little bit of naphtha to clean up after the compound, and that's it for the supplies. And I don't think I'm gonna add the price of the supplies in unless I prorate it and say, well, a box with 100 screws is this much, so 4 screws it costs that much. I can do it that way, or I can just leave that out for the cost of the wood, and I can give you what the prorated cost is, and then a lot of these little supplies and screws and wood you can source yourself. If you go out in the backyard and you grab an old 2x4 you got laying around and use that as your wood, then obviously your wood's going to be a lot less expensive. As far as the wood goes that I'm planning to use, in the spirit of keeping things inexpensive, I'm going to use a type of pine for the body and the bar. And the particular pine that I'm going to be using just happens to be spruce, which is, as you may or may not know, a rather popular tone wood for the construction of the tops of acoustic guitars. Almost, probably 95% of acoustic guitars out there, or at least a lot of them, it's very common for acoustic guitars to have spruce tops, regardless of what else the body is made out of. It could be koa or mahogany or whatever, but yeah, spruce tops are very common in acoustic guitars because of the fact that it's a good tone wood and makes a good drum head, basically. So yeah, I'm planning on using spruce, which is actually going to come from a 2x4, because these 2x4s from Lowe's. Lowe's actually uses either spruce, Douglas fir, or southern pine, all of which are harder pines. And spruce is a known tone wood. Douglas fir has an extremely high modulus of elasticity. It's like the third highest specific stiffness wood on the planet, after some restricted stuff from Africa and some rare locally sourced only stuff in Australia, apparently, according to all the charts, the wood charts that I've been able to find. So, and yeah, they actually, so their 2x4s are one of these three types of wood. It's either fir or southern pine or spruce. And when I purchased these, I got online to find out what they happened to be selling that day, and it was spruce. So I've got spruce 2x4, from which I'm going to cut the body blank and the bar blank, or the bar, or whatever. But yeah, that's where the wood's coming from, is from a 2x4. I figure I'll need about a 2-foot piece of 2x4, and then I just like split it in half, kind of a thing, and then make the body out of one half and cut the bar out of the second half. Maybe something like that. And that obviously is going to be very inexpensive, but it'll be stiffer than plywood, so you won't have any bending issues or anything like that. And what I'll end up doing is I'll, like, prorate the price of like the wood and the screws and the sandpaper and stuff like that into the cost of the build. That way you've got an idea of, with supplies and whole 9 yards and everything, it would cost you, let's say $70 or $80 or whatever it works out to be. It might work out to be a little more than that, because, if you use like a can of lacquer on a clear coat, that's going to add like $6 to the price. So, but anyway, yeah, I think you get the idea. So I'm going to try to do all of this as inexpensively as possible, but just because it's going to be inexpensive doesn't mean that I can't take my time and try to make it as good as I can while not spending any more than I have to. And it'll, on the needs versus nice versus bling scale, it'll have everything that it needs, and the idea is, the target is for it to have everything that it needs and for it to work perfectly fine and not have any issues. And then as far as nice goes, there's not going to be any money spent on upgrading any parts or anything to, locking tuners or what have you. And so all the nice stuff is going to come in the form of like nicely done fretboard edges and things of that nature. Places where attention to detail and labor can increase the niceness factor or the bling factor or both without increasing the material cost of the build. And that way, because the idea is to, show folks at home. I'm also going to try to keep it simple as far as like the tools and stuff required. And places where I do use something like, I don't know, a power planer or whatever, just to save time, I'll try to provide, alternate methods that you could do these kind of things. If I'm going to be doing something of this nature, though, these days I'm doing 40 millimeter wide triangular heels with no heel on the neck at all, and so that is going to require some planing. So I don't really see any way around this build. Well, I suppose you could always just take a saw and cut it close and then sand it down. But yeah, a plane would probably be easier. Even a hand plane would be easier. And another tool that I don't see being able to get around using, well, would be some kind of a rasp. In my case, it would be a Shinto rasp for sure, but some kind of a rasper file would. But then again, I mean, it's like you could shape the neck and the heel and all that stuff with a kitchen knife. Just using a big old kitchen knife as a draw knife, or whittling for places where you don't have to be that accurate. You could also do it that way. Maybe someday I'll do a totally hand tool build just for the challenge, but not this time out. I'll, wherever possible, if I'm doing something that requires a non-trivial tool, I'll try to provide low dollar options, alternatives that you might consider in order to get her done, as they say, without having to make a trip to the local tool store and drop big dollars on anything. So that's the general idea, and I guess what I need to do is I need to shut up for a second and figure out what I need to do. So let me do that, and I'll be back.